What's up guys, welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched where we look at all things mental health and psychology. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well to ensure that you get reminders every time that we upload each week. You can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button as well and you'll get those weekly reminders. Also make sure to hit the like button on today's video. You can comment any questions and I'll be sure to get back to you, and you can also share the video with your friends if you like. Anyway, let's get into the video, and today we're taking a look at what does depression feel like and how do we actually overcome it. Well, one of the things that we need to know first of all is that depression is incredibly common and it's incredibly powerful as well. Over 260 million people a year are diagnosed with depression, and the World Health Organization recently stated that depression was one of the leading causes of disability worldwide. So this isn't something that everybody else experiences. This is something that many people experience. And one of the things that I would say about those statistics, I'm always kind of wary of statistics because they don't often include people who maybe don't come forward for diagnosis of depression. They also don't include people that experience depressive symptoms. Now, you or I will have definitely experienced depressive symptoms at some point in our lives. So I think it's fair to say that everybody, to one degree or another, is impacted by depression. Yes, we may not all be diagnosed by the DSM as having major depressive disorder, but I think we can all relate to some of the symptomologies of depression, and we can all say at some point in our lives we felt some of those symptoms. But what is it actually like to have depression? Now, recently I did a video, well, I say recently, it was more kind of like 8-9 months ago. I did a video on how you know if you have depression or not, and I'm going to pop a little link above my head here for you to have a look at that. But some of the things that we looked at was like, what is it actually like? Well, one of the things that we keep in mind first of all is that there is a difference between low mood and depression. So when we're thinking what is depression like, that sense of low mood or just being sad about certain things or having a bit of a rough day, we may not necessarily label that as depression. The DSM says that you have to be experiencing 3 or more symptoms of what they classify as depression for more than like 3, I think it's about 3 weeks actually, I can't even remember off the top of my head. I think it's about 3 weeks until you can start to be considered as having major depressive disorder. So again, it kind of goes back to my earlier point about the statistics. We're all going to experience symptomology of depression. We're all going to experience certain levels of low mood, but that doesn't mean that we're depressed. We've got to keep in mind there's a difference between experiencing levels of low mood and depression. One of the key symptoms of experiencing depression is a lasting sense of unhappiness. And that kind of goes back to what I said about some of the DSM criteria that need to be there in order for people to be diagnosed with depression. There has to be a long-standing experience of unhappiness. And some of that can be incorporated into no longer finding joy in the things that you used to find joy in. So for example, if you're like a musician and you enjoy playing the piano, as I was saying, if you're a musician and you enjoy playing the piano and all of a sudden you start not enjoying playing the piano so much and it becomes a bit of a bore, or it becomes a bit, a bit of an effort, something you can't really be bothered doing, or something you're just actually not really enjoying as you're doing it, that may be a bit of a symptom of depression. I remember one time, many people on GetPsyched know that I used to play a lot of basketball. I remember one time in my teens, I used to train every day. I used to shoot the ball every day, and there was some things that I just dreaded going out and shooting the ball. I used to have a little hoop outside my house, and I had a basketball on a little concrete part of the garden. And there was times where I was just like, I really didn't want to go out and do it. I really couldn't be bothered. I wasn't finding that much joy in it. I think we could argue that that was maybe a little bit of an experience of some depressive symptoms at that point. And I've gone through other challenges in mental health in my life after that. But I recall that event particularly, and I always resonate with this symptom because I kind of know what that's like. It's a weird feeling because there's something, even for me, basketball was something that I kind of leant back into. When things were going wrong in my life or when things were frustrating or challenging, I always relied on basketball to kind of help pick me up. But there was that time that I didn't want to play, that I was struggling playing and I was struggling with practice. So it can feel kind of strange. It can feel contrary to what you're used to throughout larger parts of your life. But it's a key symptom. When you're thinking, what is it like actually having depression? Think about the thing that you enjoy most in your life and all of a sudden just not really enjoying it all that much. That's kind of what it's like to experience levels of depression. One of the things that I often think gets overlooked as well in considering, what's it like actually having depression is that it's more than just an emotional or psychological experience of certain symptoms. There are real physical symptoms as well. Chronic fatigue can be one. Things like headaches, even being unwell. These kind of physical symptoms are often overlooked. I had a colleague once who had a client who was coming out in hives and like blotches, severe skin irritation as a result of her depression and her anxiety. So these kind of physical symptoms can't be overlooked. I think often what happens is that we see those physical symptoms, or we have a headache, or we feel really tired, and we think, oh gosh, there's something else going on. But maybe if we look at it in a bigger picture, and we always say that here on GetPsyched, this isn't about silo symptoms. This isn't just about, that you have that symptom, therefore you have this. You have to be looking at things in a bigger picture. If you're experiencing certain physical symptoms and you're experiencing some of the other symptoms that we've talked about of what it's like actually having depression, then maybe it's time to start thinking about, what is my mental state like right now? What's my mental health like right now? Perhaps I should see a GP, or I should go and speak to a therapist. These are the kind of things to start considering. But the physical symptoms, I don't think, can be overlooked. One of the other things that's so important for us to consider when we're thinking about what depression is actually like, we have to understand what it feels like, and it's hard to do because we can't really put ourselves fully in the shoes of somebody who is experiencing severe depression unless you're experiencing that yourself. We can show empathy and we can use examples and we can consider, but it goes back a little bit to one of the things I said earlier about this is not just about low mood. So when we're thinking about what depression is actually like, it's not just about feeling sad, it's not just about feeling upset, and I'm depressed, or depression is a kind of colloquial term that we use in today's society when we're describing a feeling of sadness. Oh, that's so depressing, or that's depressing, or I'm depressed at that. We use it almost like it's a colloquial term, and it's not. It's a real clinical diagnosable mental health disorder, and we need to consider it as such. So it's not just about being or experiencing low mood, it's about actually being depressed as well. And often there's an analogy used in a book that I read once about a bell jar, where depression is almost like being cut off from the rest of the world. Depression is almost like feeling a complete sense of numbness. It's not about feeling sad or feeling low, it's about almost kind of feeling nothing. And that sense of being put in a bell jar, or a bell jar being put over somebody, was the analogy that was used in this book, and I thought it was very fitting because it really did encapsulate what depression must be like. Or at least in my experience, I know what depression can be like. And it can feel like that. You can feel isolated, you can feel alone, you can feel totally cut off. Even when you're in groups of people, you can feel isolated and alone. So again, I really want to get back to this. When we're thinking about what depression is like, it's not just about low mood, it's not just about sadness. It's about numbness, it's about emptiness, it's about a bit of a void, and that in itself can be very depressing. But I think it's really important that we get to grips more with what depression actually feels like. So let's get into the second part of the video, and in this part we're going to be taking a look at what do we actually do about our depression, or how do we treat depression? What are the things that we can do to overcome that depression, and what are our options for depression development? Well, there are a couple of things that we need to consider. There are a couple of key things that are really, really helpful whenever we're trying to overcome depression. And the first thing I would say is to seek help. Now, I know that can be really easy to say, and that's a really biased viewpoint from somebody who's doing a counselling psychology doctorate, but we can't overlook the power of speaking to people. Now, often I mean professional help, but that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. You can be talking to family members or friends, and that can be a really powerful step forward in the process of actually opening up, because I know that many people experience stigmatized barriers to seeking help or talking to people, and one of the things that can be the most challenging is actually the process of talking to someone. So talking to people that you trust can be a really key step forward. The other thing that I often recommend is utilizing free telephone helpline services. Things like the Samaritans or NHS Breathing Space can be really positive steps in actually getting into that process or getting experience of speaking to people, because the research shows time and time again that talking therapies or speaking to people about your mental health difficulties such as depression can be really, really powerful when we're trying to treat depression. The next point that I want to consider, and it's actually off the back, I've mentioned this a couple of times actually on GetPsyched, and it comes off the back of a couple of papers I've read about trauma treatment. And what it said was the process of helping others or volunteering in helping others in traumatized areas, like traumatized services by people who have experienced trauma, can be incredibly beneficial in their treatment. So actually the process of giving back can be one of the most beneficial things that people can do in the treatment of trauma. Now, I'm kind of speculating a little bit here, and it's not necessarily based on empirical evidence, which we always do here on GetPsyched, but I think that could be transferable to things like depression. I think if people are experiencing depression and they go through a process of giving back, it may not even necessarily need to be about speaking to people about their depression. It could be just general giving back to people, maybe volunteering at a food bank, or giving back to your neighbour, helping your neighbour out with something. Anything that instills a sense of worth and purpose, something we'll come to in a minute, can be very beneficial, I feel, for treatments of depression. So I don't think it's necessarily just reserved for trauma. I think actually the process of volunteering and giving back can be helpful in the treatment of depression as well. My next key point is exercise and diet, and I talk a lot about this on GetPsyched as well. And actually recently I was reading a longitudinal study by Berk in 2019 that looked at the importance of a good diet correlated to depression. And one of the things that they said was that this correlation has been talked about so much that we just think it's second nature, that we think, yeah, okay, I improve my diet and depression will improve. And yeah, you're right to some extent. But what this study by Berk in 2019 stated was that often we correlate diet with weight loss. And weight loss is not correlated to improvements in depression. Now, if you're watching this video and you feel like you maybe have depression and you feel like I could do with losing a bit of weight, that could be a healthy step forward. But that's not necessarily going to improve your levels of depression. Now, if you lose weight, you might feel a bit better about yourself, and as a result, you might increase levels of depression. So there's maybe an argument to be made there. But what Berk in 2019 stated was that this is about quality of calorie intake, the quality of your diet. And the studies talked about the fact that actually a lot of people, what they do is they know this correlation of diet and mental health and depression, so they go on these crash diets. They cut calories right out, they go on excessive exercise programs, and actually that's not beneficial. What we need to maybe do, and they looked at Mediterranean style diets in the study actually, what we need to do is replace unhealthy foods with more quality foods, more quality calories, and there is where we're going to see improvements in depressive symptoms, by the increase in the quality of our diet. That process of exercise as well, there was a study I recently read by Murray in 2019 that stated that, again, exercise is something that we know correlates heavily to improvements in depression, but often it's misunderstood and often it's not prescribed enough by general practitioners or therapists. And I find that really interesting because I often talk about exercise programs with my clients who experience depression. And I think that process of exercise can be an incredibly cathartic one. It can be incredibly beneficial when we're trying to improve our depression. But what I would say is don't take these things for granted. Really engage with your diet. Think about, am I trying to do a crash diet weight loss, or am I trying to increase the quality of my diet? Am I utilizing 30 minutes of exercise a day? These are the kind of things we need to be considering when we're trying to treat depression. I think there's also something here about what I would call like a life assessment. That's my final point, but I think it's really important to be considering it. I think we need to be thinking about things like our relationships, our work, our social life, our passion, our purpose, our sense of worth. These are the kind of things that we need to take a look at, take a step back and think, what parts of my life are leading to more depression? Or what is it in my life that's causing certain levels of depression? What's my relationships like? How do I feel about my work? What's my social life like? Do I have a sense of purpose? And I actually think recently I've been thinking a lot about this. A sense of purpose, a sense of worth, of esteem is one of those things that is so heavily correlated to depression and mental health difficulty. I think it's one of the biggest correlative factors. That lacking purpose or that lacking esteem or that lacking worth, I think has a real powerful move towards us feeling more depressed. And actually, if you go into getpsyched.org.uk, there's a free self-esteem course there for you guys to access, multiple videos and PDF handouts and worksheets for you to take a look at to improve your self-esteem. Totally free, you can access it. And I think, those are the kind of things that are really important that we do. We need to think about our esteem and our purpose if we're trying to treat depression. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. It's been great to be back. As you maybe know, I've been away for a couple of weeks from the YouTube videos. I've just recently had a son, or rather my wife has just had a baby boy. And yeah, it's me, and I'm going to take a couple of weeks off, but I'm glad to be back. I've been itching to get back to do some more videos. I hope today's video has been useful to you and that you've enjoyed it. If so, then make sure to hit that like button. You can comment on the video as well and I'll get back to you. You can share it as well. And if you've been enjoying GetPsyched as a whole, then hit that subscribe button and you can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button and you'll get weekly reminders every time I upload. Thanks so much for watching again, guys, and hopefully catch you next week.